Hi Slinkies, this is Siddean Munro and welcome to my channel. In this video I'm going to be fitting this cute little sweater dress that I recently released at the Second Life Winter Shop and Hop event to my Physique Hourglass Body and the petite versions of the Slink Physique Original and Slink Physique Hourglass bodies. So I have the dress open with my kit, which has all the various body types in it, all the hands, all the feet, everything you need. This dress is finished and I've already uploaded it to Second Life and tested it there, and it's completely UV unwrapped, it is completely textured, and all the weight painting is done. So this dress is essentially finished. I usually leave the fitting of the different sizes to the very last thing, so I finish it completely on the Physique Original body and I size up accordingly for the Hourglass body. I find it's easier to go up than down, which is why I do it this way. So the first thing I do is turn off the original body and turn on the Hourglass body. And then I select the dress with right click and Shift D to create a duplicate. And then I rename the duplicate to Hourglass. And then I hide the original. So now I'm working on this duplicate here. The next step is to delete the armature modifier, because if you don't and you try and use the sliders after you've edited the mesh, you may find that your mesh explodes into infinity, and that is not something that's easily fixed. Tab to go into edit mode, and then Z to look at it in wireframe. And you can see here just how far you need to adjust the shape of this skirt for the hourglass shape. So if we go into front view using number pad 1 and then Z to wireframe, just make sure nothing is selected, and if it is, just press A to deselect, press B to box select, and just select a part of the dress across the hips. And then we want to press SX to scale in the X axis, and we want to make sure we've got proportional editing enabled. That will let you change vertices that aren't directly selected but are adjacent to the ones you've got selected. So SX, and I usually press Shift to limit the amount of influence my mouse movement has. If I don't have Shift on, the same mouse movement moves the mesh a lot. If I do have Shift on, more mouse movement moves the mesh less. So you get a much more precise change. And then I just drag it out until it fits around the sides. And then I look at it in not wireframe mode, so Z to go back into solid view. And then grab a couple of vertices in front of the thighs here where it's clipping out. Grab a couple over here and just make sure that all fits there from the front. Now we look at it in side view and we can see that there is some adjustment to be done at the back here. So back into side view using 3 on your number pad. Z to wireframe, again make sure nothing is selected, and then press C to circle select an area at the back of the dress. And then with wireframe on, so you can see the body and you can see the part you've selected on the dress, just pull the widget out, the transform widget, rotate it a little bit and move it up. And then all you need to do is go find the bits that are still clipping and pull them out. And that's the backside done. And now we do the chest. So again, back into wireframe, make sure nothing is selected using A to deselect everything. Press C to circle select an area of the chest. Drag it out from the body. Try not to select too high, otherwise you'll end up pulling out the neckline. So I'll just change that selection to something a bit smaller and drag it out till it comes to the edge. And then rotate, because the breasts on the hourglass are bigger, more rotated and higher than the breasts on the original. So that's what we need to do with the dress. Pull this down here so that it fits properly and doesn't gape. I can't stand a gaping neckline. And now what we need to do is adjust the sides. So back into side view, back into wireframe, and then we select an area of the dress at the side. So you can see here, it's just on those sides that are currently clipping. And then we press SX with proportional editing on and just pull that out until we can see it. And then you can just manually go and adjust anything that needs any further treatment. And I usually just use the transform widget and I pull it out along an axis until it fits. You can see there's just a little bit of clipping here, so I'll just go grab that vertex, drag it out a little bit, and that's the hourglass shaping done. So then the next thing we do is we just check all over, make sure there's no clipping, and there's a little tiny bit of clipping at the back here. So I'll pull that out. Pull this out. Pull this out, there we go. And now it is perfect. So the next step is to reattach it to the armature and adjust the weighting. So we select first the dress. We select the armature rig, one of the bones. It doesn't matter if it's in pose mode or object mode. We go over to the Avastar panel and close everything down if it's not. What we want is the skinning panel. So we want to select bind to armature with the strategy of keep, because you don't want to be deleting all of these vertex groups that you've got in here already. This is what represents your weight painting. So select the dress, select the rig, go to skinning, and then select bind to armature with strategy keep. And then Avastar does its little thing, and now you'll find this dress, if you look in the modifier stack, you'll find the avatar modifier is back. And when you select a bone and rotate it around, the dress moves along with, just as it did with the original version. Now, original and hourglass are very similar in weighting. There's only a little bit of tweaking to do, and I'll do that now. So we go back into Avastar, we go to the appearance mode and bump the breast size up to 100. I tend to work on extremes because that way most people are covered. Go into weight paint, and what I'm going to do is turn off textured solid, turn on the wire so I can actually see what I'm doing here with the mesh, and then select that left pec bone there. So the bones that influence this area are these two pec bones and this bone here. This bone restricts how far these pec bones move the mesh. So we select that pec bone, and then under tools in weight paint mode, we select an add brush. And I usually keep my brushes at around 0.5 and my strength at around 0.02. I find that's a nice setting for adjustment. If you're just weight painting, obviously you'd set that a little bit higher and then you wouldn't have to worry about it as much. But this is a nice low setting for just weight adjustment. And then all I do is I just brush in a couple of times and press Alt Q. Brush, brush, Alt Q, brush, brush, Alt Q, until there's minimal clipping. Now remember, you're going to be alphaing out this part of the body, so it doesn't matter too much if there's a little clipping here and there, because you won't see it anyway. It won't be visible. Then we go over to this side and do the same thing. Brush, brush, Alt Q, brush, brush, Alt Q. And with that lower setting, it only goes a little bit at a time, so you can click a few times and it won't drastically change your weighting. If you wanted to get rid of that, what I would do is click onto this bone and then select the subtract brush with a similar settings, 0.5, 0.02, and then you can remove some weight from the chest bone. Oh, there we go. And now we have minimal clipping there in the chest area. We go back into Avastar and set the breast size slider back to its default. Remember, when you're working with the Slink kit, that I have several sliders set up as default out of the box, so several custom sliders under the body setting. Anything with the little green arrow is a custom slider setting. Under the torso and under legs. And you need to ensure when you're attaching your mesh to this rig that the sliders are set the same as specified in the help file, otherwise you will have fitting issues. And the same when you're exporting your meshes. These sliders must be set to their custom settings, otherwise you'll have fitting issues when you put it into Second Life. So the next thing I check after I've finished the chest of the Hourglass Body fitting is the butt, and I just dial it up to 100, again, just to cover everything in between. And check and make sure there's no clipping and everything looks good there, which it does, so back to default. And now the hourglass is done, we can put it away. So the next one to do is the Slink Original Petite, and I work off the original dress for that one. So once again, we press Shift, so we enable the Physique Original Petite body. We press Shift D to duplicate the original dress. Hide the first one and then rename this one to Original Petite. And then, as before, delete the armature. Now we can tab into edit mode, and under wireframe we can see how far we need to move this dress mesh to suit the smaller chest of the petite. So once again, I'll press C to circle select an area of the mesh, use proportional editing to dial it in. Needs to be pulled down a little bit and rotated around. And you can go with smaller and smaller areas if you want to influence less of the mesh, just so we don't pull it way out of shape. And then I've pulled the neckline in a little bit, so I'll just grab that and drag it back out. I'm working a little bit blind here, but I could go into wireframe if I wanted to, but it's not necessary. And now we need to just check the sides, and it's still a little bit wide on the side for this smaller chest. So back into edit mode, deselect everything, and then circle select some of the mesh at the side of the breasts. And then in solid view, SX, and drag it in until the body starts to clip through, and then just drag it back out again until you can't see any clipping. And then normally what I like to do is duck over into sculpt mode with the wire on so that I can see what the mesh is doing. And then with smooth and X mirror on, just smooth it out a little. Because it's such a small chest size, you can get away with being fairly flat in this area. And anywhere that you have pulled the mesh beyond the body, you can just pull it back out again. Again, don't worry too much if it's clipping out, because you won't see this in Second Life because of the alpha. So back into weight paint mode, I beg your pardon, object mode, and we will now do the tweaking of the weights on the breasts. Selecting the dress and then selecting the rig. You can see there's no armature modifier on here, as there should be. Go back into Avastar under the skinning panel, if I can find it. There it is. And then bind to armature. And with that done, what we want to do is remove the right and left pec influence so that we can repaint it. So we tab into edit mode, select all of your vertices. So we don't want any influence from these two bones here, left from the previous weighting. Select right pec and hit remove. Select left pec and hit remove. And now when we go into weight paint, you will find when we select these bones, There's no influence from them, unlike other bones where you can actually see the influence. Once you've done that, go back into the torso section of your appearance sliders and then dial your breast size up to 100, because again, that catches everyone between 0 and 100. Select one of your bones, your pec bones specifically, go to Tools, Add, and again with a very low strength brush, we want to just paint in some weight and press Alt Q. Paint, paint, press Alt Q. Tap, tap, Alt Q. Tap, tap, Alt Q, until we've got a nice little bit of weighting there. If it looks a little bit weird and jaggy, don't worry, I'll fix that in a moment. Do the same on the other pec bone. Tap, tab, Alt Q. Make sure when you're weight painting you have limit selection visible, turned off, or on I should say. That way you won't be painting through to the back side of your mesh. Tap, tab, Alt Q until you've got no more clipping. Now we want to go into Vertex Select mode, so press V, press A to make sure everything is selected, and under the weight paint tools you'll find a button called Smooth. If you press Smooth and then Alt Q, Smooth and then Alt Q, all that does is just smooth out the weights. So any little jaggy parts like this, go into Vertex Select mode, press Smooth, Alt Q. You see how that smooths everything out there. Okay, that looks good. Now we go back into object mode, and remember to dial that Avatar breast size slider back down to its default setting. And because nothing else in the original body has changed, that's literally the only weighting you need to fix for the petite. It's just taking out the original pec weighting and adding it in lightly to fit the petite body add-on for the original. And then we do the hourglass, exactly the same as before. So we hide the petite original kit body, we unhide the hourglass petite kit body, and then we create a duplicate, Shift D. Rename this to hourglass. Hourglass Petite 00. There we go. Hide the original and then delete the armature modifier. And now we can edit this mesh. So because the two petite chests are fairly similar in size, we can just tweak the shape a little tiny bit to suit the hourglass. There's really not very much that ever needs to be done here because they're very, very similar. And then we do the same as we did before with the fitting of the hips. So into wireframe and just make sure nothing is selected. Box select around across the hips, the widest part of the hips. Scale in the x-axis with proportional editing on. So you're making a nice curve. And just check once you've done that it's not clipping anywhere, and just adjust accordingly. You can adjust the size of your proportional editing area by scrolling up and down your mouse wheel. And then the same in the back as we did before. Into wire mode, select an area at the back side, and with proportional editing, pull it out and up and rotate it slightly to fit on the bottom. And then we can just tweak it a little bit as needed. Again, I'm just using the editing widgets to pull it out into shape. It really doesn't matter if your different sizes aren't perfectly identical. So you can really just, you know, go by eye on it. And now that we have it fitted, we select the dress and the armature, and we go back to Avatar skinning. bind to armature and keep. And then as before, we go to the torso, breast size, check that we're not clipping anywhere and correct anything that is. So in weight paint, selected this bone, go to the add brush, tap, tap, Alt Q. If you find that it comes out too far like that, you can always just undo that. Dial this down to 0.1, let's say, brush, Alt Q, and you can really just tweak it very, very gently like that. And that all looks pretty good. I forgot to do this, so I'll show you what to do. If you forget to make any changes, I'll show you what you can do. It's super easy. Put the breast size slider back down to its default. Remember, always do that before you delete any armature modifiers, because you'll end up with fitting issues if you don't. Back into object mode, delete the avatar modifier, edit mode, just grab those bits that you wanted to move, turn that down a little. And now we can just go back, select the dress and the armature, and back over to skinning, which I can never ever find in this list, bind to armature. And that's pretty much it. You've now got 4 dresses that you can upload into Second Life, and you can tweak this for as long as you like, but it really isn't necessary to redo all of that work you've already done on the original size of the body. So just again to reiterate, build around the Physique original body, and then once you've completely finished the original garment, adjust and tweak the weights and size for the Hourglass and the Petite bodies. And that is the easiest and fastest way to do it. So I hope this has been helpful to you. If you have any questions, feel free to message me in World, and I will help you as much as I can. Thanks for watching.